Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay. On election night, one of the choices will be Donald Trump. We're told he's a maverick. We're told he's not on the same page as official, normal U.S. foreign policy, which is meant to be rather interventionist. We're told that he might buck the trends of, for example, that led us into the Iraq War that Hillary Clinton supported and so on. Of course, we know that Donald Trump, in fact, at the time of the intervention in Libya, actually called for U.S. troops to go into Libya. There's video of that, but he doesn't talk about that very much. But whatever Donald Trump is, are we going to be looking at a Trump presidency, or are we going to be looking at a situation a little akin to the Cheney-Bush situation, where Vice President Cheney was in charge of very critical sections of American policy, especially the preparations for the war with Iraq, intelligence on counterterrorism, which apparently went to him instead of up the normal channels, and some people suggest that may have something to do with why the agencies played Keystone Cop prior to 9/11, and so on. Is Pence going to be the new Cheney if Trump is the new president? And if so, what significance does that mean, and how dangerous is that? Now joining us to discuss these things, first of all, from Indiana is Amber Stearns. She's a 20-plus year veteran news reporter in Indiana. Much or all of those 20 years, she's been following the career of Mike Pence. She's currently the news editor at Nouveau, an alternative weekly newspaper in Indianapolis. And joining us is Allan Nairn. He's an American investigative journalist who became well known when he was imprisoned by Indonesian military forces under United States-backed strongman Suharto while reporting in East Timor. He's been awarded the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial First Prize, the George Polk Award for Journalism for magazine reporting, and the James Aronson Award for social justice journalism. Thanks for joining us, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Allan, let me ask you the first question. In terms of, when he was asked, who his role model would be for vice president, Pence says Dick Cheney. And that's an interesting thing, because as we know, when Trump offered Kasich the vice presidency, he said he'd be the most powerful vice president in the history of the country. And if Pence was offered the same thing, and he's comparing himself or what he would like to be as a new Cheney, that means he may have a serious hand in foreign policy and areas of domestic as well. So what do we know about Pence, and what might this mean?
Well, we can't know how much power he'll have. Cheney was, I think, a kind of uniquely dominant figure, but Pence was Cheney's point man in the House and pushing through the Iraq War and the Patriot Act. He's a fierce interventionist. In the vice presidential debate, he called for, in effect, attacking Russian military facilities in Syria, and for putting U.S. Missile defense equipment in the Czech Republic and Poland, which the Russians have said it would be completely unacceptable, and it's teeing up a confrontation, a military confrontation with Russia on two fronts. At the same time, Trump has called for war on two pretexts against Iran. He says he will immediately cancel the Iran nuclear deal, which will mean that in a short period of time, Iran will the U.S. claims have the capability to make nuclear weapons. And then with the deal torn up, the only U.S. option to stop that from Trump's point of view will be war. And he also said that if Iranian sailors taunt or give the finger to American sailors, he'll sink the boats. In addition to Pence being in the vice presidency, Cheney and Rumsfeld are both backing Trump, in contrast to the middle-level and upper-middle-level bureaucrats of the Pentagon and the CIA and the State Department, who tend to back Clinton. Trump is also being backed by two of the most militant generals, General Flynn and General Boykin. Flynn ran assassination operations, and Boykin openly spoke about the U.S. in the Middle East being engaged in a religious war of Christians against Muslims, and he was running U.S. Special Forces.
There was an interview on 60 Minutes. Leslie Stahl, I believe, was interviewing Trump and Pence not long after Pence was appointed his vice president. And Pence's interpretation of Make America Great Again, and Trump is sitting there nodding his head, was the reassertion of American military power around the world. His main critique of Obama and Clinton, he said Clinton was going to be weak, has been weak on Russia as Secretary of State. His main interpretation of Make America Great Again is the reassertion of American power. Amber, what do we know about Pence and domestic policy? You covered him in many ways in Indiana, including as governor.
When you look at Pence's positions on social issues, we will see, should Pence send to the vice presidency, a very stark difference to what we've seen over the last 8 years with the Obama-Biden administration. Pence is one who does not believe in climate change. He is one who is very sharp in his positions in terms of LGBT issues. He had given a speech on the congressional floor, on the House floor, talking about how marriage between homosexuals would be an abomination to everything that he believes in. He has described himself as a Christian first, a conservative, and thirdly, a Republican. And he really, really adheres to that in everything that he does. We've seen it here in Indiana, where the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was a huge debacle here in the state of Indiana and really affected his position and his potential run for the presidency. I mean, Mike Pence could have been one of the masses that would have gone toe-to-toe with Donald Trump in the primary. But because of events that happened here in Indiana, that infrastructure was not exactly where he wanted it, so he decided to run for governor again. So I'm sure that when the vice presidential carrot was dangled in front of him, he took it, knowing what the potential there was. I mean, he really did have his eyes set on the White House. In 2015, things that happened here locally did not allow that to happen, but he's got a new shot at the big time here in 2016. But everything that we've seen as far as domestic policy, social issues are extremely conservative, and we will see a reverse of what has happened over the last 8 years should he become vice president.
You mentioned to me off camera that both Cheney and Pence are members of ALEC. This is this lobbying policy group that represents right-wing various views. They get money from the Koch brothers and others. How has that influenced his own governorship in Indiana?
Well, Mike Pence has been very connected to the Koch brothers for quite a long time. And in fact, he had placed in 2015 a former key advisor of his who had worked with him while he was in Congress, had worked with him minimally as governor, but then suddenly he had a key position within Koch Industries and the Koch brothers' efforts. There have been about 3 other people that have been associated with Mike Pence working in his office, key advisors when he was in Congress, that have suddenly been placed within the last couple of years with the Koch brothers. So there's a strong relationship that Mike Pence has with the Koch brothers, and that continues at this point. And I'm sure that that was probably a deciding factor in the things that he brought to the table when he was named vice president.
Now, the Koch brothers, Allan, have not endorsed Trump, even though Pence seems quite connected to them. They're putting all their money in down ticket races. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, the Koch brothers are unhappy with some of Trump's positions on what they consider corporate welfare. That's a big issue for the Kochs. And basically what they want to do is strip away government subsidies for companies that are competing with them and keep their own subsidies. ALEC is an extremely important and powerful organization in moving the U.S. to the right. They have for years been writing legislation at the state level, which is introduced across the country with money to push it through. And this is accomplished on the state level, things like right-to-work laws, which crush unions, voter suppression, which keep African Americans and others who are considered pro-democratic groups from voting, repealing what little restrictions there are on the health and safety and labor and environmental activities of corporations, gutting the prosecution of corporate crime. Also, congressional redistricting, which has been extremely important, which is what puts the Republicans in control of the House at the moment, and probably after tomorrow, even though in the last election, the Democrats actually won the popular vote nationwide for the House of Representatives. But because of the gerrymandering that groups like ALEC and the Kochs had pushed, they have what many regard as a stranglehold on the House that will be very hard to break until the next nation.
Allan, the language of Trump, while it's been conciliatory towards Russia and talking about wanting to work with Russia, it's been very hostile towards China. Pence seems to be focused on hostile rhetoric vis-a-vis Russia and China. But how serious, if there's a Trump-Pence presidency, can they take this kind of confrontation? One would think the preponderance of certainly the professional opinion in the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies and such, you would think would not be so in favor of notching up this confrontation. But again, as we saw with Cheney, you can have presidencies that don't listen to the professionals.
Right. Yeah, that's an important point. Many of the things that Trump in particular says are just not serious. These are things that will not get implemented, and it's very likely that he'll be running a traditional Republican W. Bush style foreign policy. We don't know what power we don't know whether Pence will have Cheney's power, but we know he has Cheney's policies. And if also people like General Flynn and General Boykin come into the administration, that could set the stage for a dramatic increase in the already extensive U.S. Drone and assassination operations being done under the Obama administration, because those two attack Obama for not killing nearly enough.
If you again look domestically, Amber, some people have said, imagine a Rudy Giuliani as head of Homeland Security. In terms of domestic repression on dissent, the kind of language, law and order language we heard at the Republican convention, Sheriff David Clark from Milwaukee County, it was rather chilling, some of the rhetoric we heard. When law and order, a lot of people meaning zero tolerance police policies, crackdown on protest. Has there been any indication of that in Indiana?
In Indiana, there really hasn't been any of that type of rhetoric or any indication that would be the position. However, I will say that Mike Pence is extremely good at spinning a word and storytelling, and I think we've seen it throughout this campaign here in the last 60 days, where whatever Trump says, Mike Pence has a way of softening it and using specific language that makes it not seem as bad as it originally seems, without changing the intent or changing the true message. And I think that that's the kind of thing that we will continue to see in a Mike Pence vice presidency, is him taking the message and crafting it to be, it may still be poison, but he'll put a certain amount of sugar in it.
Allan, just finally, some people say that it kind of doesn't really matter who gets elected president or vice president, that the American military, industrial, intelligence machine and such kind of has its own logic, and the presidents and vice presidents go along with it. What do you make of that argument?
It is. It does have its own logic. And both Trump and Clinton support continuing the U.S. policy of being willing to kill civilians overseas. But there's a radical difference between Clinton and Trump. This election is really a referendum on rightist revolution, because the forces that have assembled around Trump, including neo-Nazis, open racists, trigger-happy police, they will fundamentally transform American politics and will, I think, unleash the beast in white America. You mentioned the Republican convention. At the convention, they were referring to the Black Lives Matter movement as terrorist. And imagine what Rudy Giuliani as Attorney General will do, who he'll go, who he'll go after. It's especially chilling in light of the recent activities of the FBI. So it makes a massive fundamental difference. In the Democratic primary, there was a referendum on what you could call left revolution, and it did better than expected. But that was defeated when Bernie Sanders lost. So in realistic terms, that is no longer on the ballot. It's necessary now to stop Trump, because if he gets in, he will roll back decades of gains, and popular activists will be fighting for their lives, trying to preserve whatever gains they fought for over so many decades. And
I'm sorry, we're having an
trying to fend
audio.
off prosecution.
Alan, a little bit of an
Trump
audio problem. Maybe you could just repeat that last sentence. Just the last few words.
And also Trump, Giuliani, Chris Christie, they will go after people.
All right, Alan, Amber, thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network. And in case you think that we're just trashing Trump here, please explore some of our other election on the website, and you will see rather vigorous criticism of Hillary Clinton as well. Thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.